There are moments in history that remain shrouded in darkness. Events so disturbing that they're pushed aside, forgotten, or deliberately buried. Today, we delve into a chapter that many would rather forget, but remains a stark testament to human cruelty and the politics that sometimes overshadow righteousness.
Sounds intense, Leo. I'm not sure if I'm ready.
Brace yourself, Dane. For those watching, this journey might be unsettling, but it's a tale that needs telling. Welcome to Leo's Time Capsule. From the early 17th century, Japan embraced an insular existence. The Tokugawa shogunate's Sakoku policy, meaning closed country, held the nation in a tight embrace of cultural and technological stasis. Their self-imposed isolation from external influence made Japan a land where time seemingly stood still, holding on to traditions and techniques that had flourished in the early 1600s. However, by the 19th century, the wider world was evolving rapidly. Western powers, leveraging their industrial and technological advancements, expanded their dominions. China, an ancient and once powerful civilization, found itself enmeshed in the coils of colonization. The Opium Wars, where Britain forced trade relations upon China, exemplified the might of Western imperialism. China's subsequent signing of the unequal treaties served as a glaring warning to other nations in Asia. These treaties, heavily favoring Western powers, carved out portions of China into concessions, where foreign laws ruled and the Chinese were second-class citizens in their own land. Japan took note. The humiliating position of their neighboring giant was a stark lesson. They realized that in this new world order, technological and military strength dictated terms. The unexpected arrival of American Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships in 1853 was the wake-up call Japan couldn't ignore. His demand to open Japan to the foreign trade showcased Western power and intention. Imagine witnessing your powerful neighbor being dissected piece by piece.
And you might be next unless you change the game.
That's precisely the crossroad Japan found itself at. Picture this, folks. One day you're living a life reminiscent of centuries ago, and the next you're thrust into the whirlwind of the modern age. That was Japan after the arrival of Matthew C. Perry in 1853.
Talk about a rude awakening. It's like sleeping through several iPhone updates and then trying to figure out why your screen time skyrocketed.
Quite the analogy, Dane. Indeed, Japan found itself in the global limelight, no longer the hermit kingdom, but a budding player in the grand theater of world affairs. The Meiji Restoration in 1868 was the inception of this drastic transformation.
Right, the Meiji makeover, as I like to call it. Swipe left to samurais, swipe right to steam engines.
Your modern lingo aside, Dane, it's fascinating how Japan swiftly imbibed from the West. They didn't just adopt, they adapted. From governance to military might, they embraced change with an intensity rarely seen in history.
Guess they realized that if you can't beat them, join them, then outdo them. It's the classic underdog playbook, just with more sushi.
Aptly put. And while they were making strides, China's plight served as a looming warning. The so-called century of humiliation that saw China being sliced and diced by colonial powers underscored the urgency for Japan.
Nothing like watching your neighbor's house get a bad paint job to inspire a home renovation, eh?
Indeed, Japan was determined to avoid China's fate. They fortified both their economic and military stature, embodying the ethos of Fukoku Kyohai, or rich country, strong army.
Rich and strong. Isn't that everyone's dream after a New Year's resolution? Only Japan actually stuck to theirs.
They did, Dane. Their determination transformed them into a significant global contender in mere decades.
Well, I always say when life gives you Perry, make modernization.
As we shift our gaze to the larger Asian landscape, we observe Japan's stark ambitions taking a form, and not always a benevolent one. Its focus sharpened on a land with deep history and resources, China.
Think of it as the intense staring contest, where one player has fresh contacts and the other's eyes are already drying out.
Right, Dane. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, China had become, to some extent, the playground for imperial powers. Britain had its opium, France its concessions, and Germany its territories. The open door policy ensured that China was accessible to all, but truly belonging to none.
The original timeshare concept, only no one's enjoying their vacation here.
Indeed, but Japan was keen on having more than just a timeshare. Their victories in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1894-95 and the subsequent Russo-Japanese War in 1905 emboldened them. Japan's ambitions were clear: to establish dominance in East Asia.
Well, winning does give you that confidence boost. It's like winning a karaoke contest and then thinking you're the next Beyoncé.
That might be stretching it, Dane, but I see your point. Japan, however, didn't stop at merely exerting political and military dominance. They turned China into an economic goldmine, exploiting its vast resources. Mining, manufacturing, railroads. Japan was profiting heavily.
Money makes the world go round, or at least it fuels the machine of ambition.
Certainly, and Japan's machine was well oiled. But there was a darker side, an even more macabre underbelly to this dominance. China was becoming Japan's experimental field. From chemical weaponry trials to horrific human testing, the extent of Japanese militarism and its thirst for dominance was chillingly evident.
So not just after the gold and glory, but some very grim science too, like turning your backyard into a Breaking Bad episode.
A grim comparison, but not far off, Dane. The invasion of Manchuria in 1931 was a testament to Japan's thirst. By renaming it Manchukuo and installing a puppet regime, Japan had virtually a free hand in the region.
Puppet regimes? Because why make your own decisions when you can have a marionette do it for you?
Exactly. And in the midst of all this exploitation, one fact is stark: the human cost was colossal. Conservative estimates indicate that China suffered millions of casualties between 1936 to 45 due to the Japanese invasion and subsequent atrocities.
Talk about a heavy price tag. No nation should ever have to pay such a price for another's ambitions.
Precisely, Dane. It's essential we remember this history, not to foster enmity, but to ensure such atrocities are never repeated.
History's a teacher, Leo, but only if we're willing students.
Among the numerous dark chapters in the annals of World War II, there's a story that is particularly heinous and less discussed: the inception of Unit 731.
Sounds like one of those super secret club names. But I have a feeling this isn't about secret handshakes and decoder rings, is it?
Far from it, Dane. Born from the shadows of Japanese militarism, Unit 731 was established under the facade of a water purification unit. A cover-up for its real intent: biological and chemical warfare research.
Oh boy, talk about the wolf in sheep's clothing.
The brainchild of this nightmare was Shiro Ishii, a doctor with an insidious fascination. Born to a middle-class family in 1892, Ishii rose through the ranks to join the army as a surgeon in 1921. His travels to the World War I battlefields in Europe ignited a perverse interest in chemical and biological warfare.
There's always that one guy who visits beautiful Europe and thinks, I wonder how I could turn this inspiration into a mass destruction machine.
A grim observation, Dane. Ishii's reputation grew rapidly. By 1936, he was given the reins to create Unit 731. Based near Harbin in northern China, the unit's facilities could accommodate up to 1,000 prisoners. And with this capacity came unprecedented horrors.
I'm not sure I want to know, but hit me.
Under Ishii's guidance, alongside notable scientists like Dr. Hisato Yoshimura, Unit 731 wasn't just a place of incarceration. It became a house of grotesque experiments. Human subjects, many of whom were Chinese, were used as guinea pigs for a vast array of horrendous tests.
Making Frankenstein's lab sound like child's play.
To put it into perspective, imagine being exposed to diseases like plague, typhus, and smallpox without consent. Add to that injections of tuberculosis, cholera, and syphilis. Many innocent souls in the nearby towns and villages were unknowingly subjected to germ warfare when the unit released contaminated agents in the surroundings.
It's like a twisted scientist's playground. And here I thought my high school lab was terrifying when we accidentally turned the water blue.
It's hard to fathom the scale and depravity, Dane. Infamous experiments included releasing flea bombs filled with plague-infested insects, offering poisoned food to children, and overloading subjects with tetanus vaccines causing deathly spasms.
Sounds like they were writing the playbook on how to be the worst humans ever.
And the horrors didn't end there. Ishii and his team were driven by a morbid curiosity. They dissected live prisoners without anesthetics to observe infections firsthand, believing that decomposition post-mortem would distort their findings.
That's a level of cruel I can't even wrap my head around.
It's a dark testament to the lengths humans can go when detached from empathy and humanity. Unit 731 is not just a symbol of wartime atrocity, but a chilling reminder of the dark depths of human experimentation.
It's one history lesson I wish we never had, but one we must never
forget. As we venture deeper into the horrors of Unit 731, it's imperative to understand the full scale of the atrocities, not just for historical accuracy, but as a testament to the victims' memories.
Considering what you've shared so far, I'm bracing myself.
In the sprawling complex of Unit 731, the euphemistically named logs were the live human subjects of these experiments, mostly Chinese, but also including Mongolians, Koreans, Russians, and even a few Allied POWs. The term logs was a chilling attempt to dehumanize their victims.
Dehumanizing is putting it mildly. That's just monstrous.
Indeed, some of the experiments conducted were truly nightmarish. For instance, prisoners were often subjected to vivisection without anesthesia after being deliberately infected with various diseases. Doctors wanted to study the internal effects of these diseases without the complication of decomposition.
Hold up, you're saying they cut people open while they were still alive?
Yes, Dane, and it gets worse. To study the effects of frostbite, they would subject the logs to sub-zero temperatures until their limbs froze. Then they would try different methods of thawing, often leading to gangrene, amputations, or death.
I can't even find words.
There were also pressure chamber tests, where victims were placed inside until their eyes popped out from the pressure. Others were spun in centrifuges until they died. Some were even deprived of food and water to determine the length of time until death. The cruelty knew no bounds.
This isn't just mad science, this is pure evil.
And the terrifying part was the meticulous nature of these experiments. Every detail, every observation was carefully noted, charted, and studied. The ultimate goal was to harness these findings for potential biological warfare. Diseases like anthrax, bubonic plague, and cholera were weaponized, leading to outbreaks and deaths in surrounding Chinese provinces.
It's haunting to think that beneath the banner of scientific research, such unimaginable suffering and cruelty were sanctioned.
The impact was profound. It's estimated that more than 200,000 people died as a direct result of these experiments and the biological warfare Unit 731 waged. The sheer scale and cruelty of the unit's operations make it one of the darkest chapters of World War II.
We have talked about a lot of dark periods in history, but this is a whole new level of inhumanity.
It's a grim reminder, Dane, that we must always be vigilant against the darker instincts of humanity and ensure such atrocities are never repeated. As World War II drew to a close, one might think that those responsible for the horrors of Unit 731 would be held accountable. However, the post-war scenario revealed the complexities and nuances of international politics.
Let me guess, some kind of a deal was struck?
Precisely. After the war, Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii and his colleagues found themselves in a rather advantageous position. Despite the gravity of their crimes, the information and data they possessed regarding biological warfare was of immense value to the victors, especially the United States.
The age-old dilemma, morality versus military advantage.
Unfortunately, it's a recurring theme in history. The US struck a deal granting immunity to Ishii and his team in exchange for their extensive research on biological warfare. This decision was further complicated by the looming Cold War. With the Soviet Union emerging as a major adversary, the US sought any advantage, even if it meant compromising on principles.
So they essentially got a get-out-of-jail-free card, because they had something the big guys wanted.
In simplistic terms, yes. But it wasn't just the US. When the Soviets captured members of Unit 731, many expected severe punishments. Surprisingly, even they only handed out prison terms, with most perpetrators being repatriated to Japan in the 1950s, in a bid to foster better relation.
Sounds like everyone was playing a high-stakes game with these war criminals as pawns.
It underscores the importance of international laws and unbiased tribunals in prosecuting war crimes. Today, the legacy of Unit 731 serves as a chilling testament to the lengths nations can go in the pursuit of power, and the moral compromises they're willing to make.
As a haunting lesson, one we should remember, so history doesn't repeat itself.
Exactly, Dane. It's not just about remembering the past, but learning from it, ensuring such horrors are never allowed to occur again. As we close this chapter, it's essential to recognize the importance of history, not just as stories from the past, but as lessons for our future.
Hard to like a story like this, but if it helps someone learn, then it's worth it.
Dane's right. If you found this episode enlightening, please give it a thumbs up. Remember, by sharing this video, you help in ensuring such events aren't forgotten.
And hey, if you want more deep dives into history with the side of my charming commentary, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Together we can learn, grow, and hopefully ensure a brighter future for all.